The night my parents tried to take $92,000 from me. I hugged my mother, said goodnight, and went upstairs to listen to my father fail to crack a password he was never going to crack. It took him 3 attempts and 12 minutes. The account had been locked for 5 weeks. My name is Sterling Chapman, 29 years old. I'm an associate attorney at a civil litigation firm on Park Avenue South in Manhattan. I graduated from Columbia Law School in May 2020, debt-free, with a class rank in the top 12%, and a job offer I accepted before my diploma was printed. I did not get there easily. I got there because my grandmother, a woman named Ruth Chapman, had the foresight to open a custodial education account in my name in 1998 when I was 2 years old, funded steadily over 15 years, and die in 2014, having left me a gift letter, signed and notarized, that designated every cent of that account, $92,315.83 at the time I accessed it, for my higher education. My parents were the custodians of that account. That is the detail that matters. Not emotionally, legally, because being the custodian of a minor's custodial account does not make the money yours. It makes you the manager, the beneficiary. In this case, me, retains the equitable ownership of the funds under IRS Publication 970 and the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act. A custodian who withdraws funds for purposes other than the direct benefit of the named minor commits a taxable event and exposes themselves to penalties, back taxes, and potential legal liability. I know this now. I learned it at Columbia. But the reason I know it matters is because of a Sunday evening in September 2017, the night my parents sat me down at the dinner table in Stamford, Connecticut, and told me that my future had been reclassified as a family asset. Let me tell you what happened. All of it. It was Sunday, September 24th, 2017. I had been at Columbia Law for 3 weeks. 3 weeks in, and I was already understanding that law school was not the kind of thing you drifted through. It was the kind of thing that consumed you. The caseload, the Socratic method, the permanent low-grade anxiety of being surrounded by people who all appeared to know exactly what they were doing, while you were quietly wondering whether you had made the right decision. I was adjusting. I was managing. I was 3 weeks into the most demanding thing I had ever done. That morning, my mother called. "Can you come home for dinner tonight? We need to talk about something important. Your sister will be here." 2. I drove 2 hours and 18 minutes from Manhattan back to Stamford on I-95 in my Honda Accord with a navy blue folder on the passenger seat. The folder was not an accident. I will explain it shortly. But first, what I found when I arrived. My parents' house in the Cove neighborhood of Stamford sat on a quiet residential street lined with oaks that were turning in late September. I pulled into the driveway at 4:15 p.m. My sister Ashley's silver Camry was already there, parked at the angle she always parked, slightly crooked, like she'd stopped paying attention 6 feet before she finished the job. Inside, Ashley was on the sofa with red eyes. My mother was in the kitchen making pot roast, Ashley's favorite, not mine. My father was not in his usual chair in the living room. Something was arranged. Something had been prepared for me. Dinner started at 6:30. The conversation was surface level and forced. The weather. My first weeks at school. Nothing real. At 6:42, I noticed Ashley's engagement ring was gone. She'd been engaged since March. At 7:03, my father set down his napkin. "Ashley is 5 months pregnant. He said Derek lost his job. The wedding is postponed. She needs help." A pause. The kind of pause that comes before the thing you actually drove 2 hours to hear. We've decided to transfer your education fund to Ashley. The fund your grandmother left, $92,000. That'll cover Ashley's medical costs. Help her get on her feet. Set up the nursery. My father said it with the measured delivery of a man who had rehearsed it. You're already at Columbia. You can take loans like everyone else. Columbia Law tuition was $65,874 per year in 2017. He knew that number. He'd looked it up. He knew what he was asking me to absorb. He'd done the math and concluded that my future was a reasonable price to pay for someone else's present. My mother came in right behind him, the rationalization arriving fast, like it had been queued up. Sweetheart, you've always been so capable. Ashley can't work right now. She's pregnant. But you have options. Loans, part-time work. It builds character. This is what family does. Ashley was crying on the other side of the table. I'm so sorry. Sterling, I didn't ask for this. She didn't refuse it either. She apologized for taking it, and continued to take it, which is a distinction I had learned to recognize over years of watching it happen, because this was not the first time. I sat at that table and thought about a pattern I had been watching since I was 9 years old. Ashley's car accident in 2005. 12 years old, no license, drove a neighbor's car into a mailbox. $6,200 withdrawn from my custodial account, listed in my father's transaction notes as Sterling educational expense. Vehicle safety education. Ashley's college semester in 2009. She enrolled. Lasted 4 months. Withdrew. $18,600 gone. Listed as Sterling college preparation materials. Ashley's wedding deposit in 2012. She was 23. Engaged the first time the engagement dissolved before the wedding. $8,500 withdrawn. Sterling miscellaneous education expenses. Every single time Ashley needed money. I was the source. Not because I had agreed, because I was the custodial account, and my father had the access codes. I sat at that table, and I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I did not produce the Navy folder. Not yet. I said one word. Okay. They looked at each other with the relief of people who had prepared for resistance and were pleasantly surprised by its absence. My mother stood up and hugged me. A real hug. Warm. The kind that used to mean safety. She smelled like White Diamond's perfume, the same one she'd worn since 1998. She whispered, I love you, Sterling. I love you, too, Mom, I said. And here is the thing that nobody understood that night. I meant it. I loved my parents. I still do. In the complicated way that you can love someone and understand simultaneously exactly what they are capable of doing to you. I climbed the 14 stairs to my old bedroom. Each one creaked exactly as it had since I was 12. I went inside. I locked the door. The click of that lock was the most satisfying sound I had produced all evening. I sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in my lap and my laptop open on the desk. Downstairs, I could hear plates being cleared, my mother's soft voice, Ashley murmuring about the baby. I opened the Fidelity app. Balance $92,315.83. I whispered to the empty room, "This is mine." It had been mine for 5 weeks. They just didn't know that yet. I didn't know yet that in less than 3 minutes, my father was going to sit down at his desktop computer in the study directly below me and find out. Let me back up 5 weeks. In late August 2017, 3 weeks before I left for Columbia, I had a conversation with a second-year law student named Carl Briggs. Carl was a year ahead of me. a scholarship student from Philadelphia, who had the particular sharpness of someone who had spent his life learning to protect what little he had. We met at a pre-orientation event in August and got coffee afterward. I told him about the fund, about the pattern, about the withdrawals over the years that I'd noticed in the transaction history, but never fully organized into something actionable. I told him about my mother's text from 4 weeks before, a message that said, "That money is for the family, not a threat." Exactly. More like a statement of belief, a worldview. Carl looked at me over his coffee. "You're the named beneficiary on a custodial account, Tess, and you're 18 or older. 21. Then you can request transfer of custodianship to yourself," he said under the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act. The custodianship terminates at the age of majority, which in Connecticut is 18 for UTMA accounts. They shouldn't still be controlling it. They may not have notified the institution of your majority status. I drove to a Fidelity branch office on Main Street in Stamford the following Monday. I brought my ID, my Social Security card, and a copy of my grandmother's gift letter, the original notarized, signed by Ruth Chapman in June 2002. I explained the situation to a representative named Ms. Ortega, who pulled the account, reviewed my documentation, and confirmed the custodianship should have terminated at 18. I was 21. I was 3 years overdue for sole control. Miss Ortega completed the custodianship transfer that afternoon. I set a new password. I set up security alerts. Any login attempt from an unrecognized device would trigger an immediate push notification to my phone. I set the account recovery email to an address my parents had never seen. Then I drove back to Stamford, helped my mother with dinner, and did not say a word about any of it. I also sat down that same week and pulled every transaction record from the account going back 12 years. I printed them. I organized them chronologically. I cross-referenced each withdrawal against what I knew about the family timeline. What I found was worse than I expected. The 3 withdrawals I already knew about. $6,200, $18,000. $600, $8,500, totaled $33,300. Each had a memo notation listing my name and an educational purpose. I had never seen those memos. I had never authorized those expenses. They were fiction. Fiction my father had created to justify withdrawals he was making for Ashley. But there was more. Smaller amounts. 12 years of smaller amounts I had not tracked. $30 withdrawals. $80 withdrawals. A $340 charge in 2013 I could find no explanation for. When I totaled them, they came to $13,850 in unauthorized withdrawals beyond the 3 large ones. I put everything into the navy blue folder. I added a printed copy of IRS publication 970 Section 5, highlighted in yellow. Any withdrawal from a custodial account that is not for the direct educational benefit of the named beneficiary is a taxable event. The custodian is liable for penalties equal to 10% of the withdrawing amount, plus back interest from the year of withdrawal. I calculated the penalty exposure, 2005, 6,210% penalty. $620 plus interest compounded over 12 years. 2009. $18,600. 10%, $1,860, plus 8 years of interest, 2012. $8,500. 10%, $850, plus 5 years of interest. Conservative total IRS exposure over $4,000 in penalties and back taxes if audited more. I put the folder on the passenger seat of my Accord. I drove 2 hours and 18 minutes to Stamford on a Sunday evening. I ate pot roast. I said, Okay. I hugged my mother. I went upstairs. At 8:56 p.m., my phone buzzed against my thigh. Unauthorized login attempt detected. Device Windows PC. Unrecognized. Location: Stamford, Connecticut. My father's desktop. The study was directly below my old bedroom. I could hear through the floorboards the faint tap of keyboard keys. Slow at first. Confident. Then faster. Then frustrated. My mother's voice muffled. "What's wrong?" "Vincent password's not working." I sat in the dark and did not move. The second alert came at 8 hours 57 minutes and 41 seconds. Failed login attempt. Incorrect password. 1 attempt remaining. The tapping stopped. The chair scraped back. Footsteps heavy toward the stairs. They stopped halfway up. A pause. Then he came back down. More typing. Slower this time. Deliberate at 8 hours 59 minutes and 28 seconds. The final alert. Security lockout activated. Account access restricted for 24 hours. 12 seconds of silence. Then clearly through the floor, it locked me out. "What do you mean?" "The account. It says the password's been changed." A longer silence. Then louder. The voice that had delivered the dinner table verdict 2 hours ago. My father's voice stripped of its rehearsed calm. "Sterling." I stood up. I picked up the Navy folder from the desk. I walked to the door, unlocked it, and stood at the top of the stairs. My father was at the bottom. My mother was in the hallway behind him. Ashley was in the living room doorway, hand on her stomach, eyes wide. "Something you need," I said. My father stared up at me. He was doing the calculation, trying to understand how his son had smiled at the dinner table and said, "Okay," while the money was already gone. "The account is in my name," I said. "Has been since late August. The custodianship should have transferred at 18. I'm 21. I requested the correction through Fidelity." Silence. "You planned this," my mother said. "I protected myself," I said. "That's different." I held up the Navy folder. "I'm going back to Manhattan tonight. When you're ready to have a real conversation, I'm available. But I'm not available for another withdrawal." I walked down the stairs, past my father, through the hallway, and out the front door. Ashley's silver Camry was still in the driveway, still parked crooked. I drove back to Manhattan. The folder was on the passenger seat. The account was locked. The night air through the window was cool and clean, the way September in Connecticut always feels when the leaves are starting to turn. I didn't know it yet, but the most important part of this story was still 8 years away. If you've been listening for a while and want accounts like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. So, thank you. 8 years is a long time to build something. I graduated from Columbia Law in May 2020, debt-free because I had the $92,315.83 my grandmother intended for exactly that purpose. I joined my current firm in June 2028. I made associate in 2022. I had an apartment in Murray Hill, a savings account I managed with the precision of someone who has understood since age 21 that financial documentation is not a bureaucratic chore. It is self-defense. My relationship with my parents in those 8 years was what I would describe as functional distance, holiday calls, the occasional dinner when I was in Stamford, civil exchanges that stayed on the surface because neither side had decided what the honest version of the relationship looked like. My father and I did not discuss the account. My mother did not mention it. Ashley and I exchanged birthday texts and occasional updates about her daughter, Emma, who had been born in February 2018. Healthy, loud. With Ashley's eyes and Derek's stubbornness, which I mean descriptively, not critically. The confrontation I had been carrying in the folder for 8 years came in December 2025. My mother called on a Tuesday evening. Her voice had the quality it gets when she is carrying something she has finally decided to set down. "Your father and I want to see you," she said. "There are things we should have said a long time ago." We met at a coffee shop on Atlantic Street in Stamford on a Saturday morning, a place called The Anchor, warm and small, the kind of cafe that fills up with locals on weekend mornings. My parents arrived first. My father looked older, not dramatically, just the honest accumulation of 8 years. My mother's hair had gone mostly silver. They were already seated when I walked in, and they had chosen a corner table away from the foot traffic. I sat down. I put the Navy folder on the table. My father looked at it. "You kept that," he said. The conversation started with my mother. She did not use the managed warmth of 8 years ago. She used something raw and less rehearsed. We were wrong. We've known it for years, and we've been too proud to say it. My father was quiet for a moment. "Then your grandmother left that for you. We had no right to threaten it. What we did with Ashley's expenses before that, we told ourselves it was for the family, but we were pulling from your account and calling it yours." That was wrong. I looked at him. "The 3 withdrawals you knew about come to $33,000, I said. "But I pulled the full transaction history in 2017. There's an additional $13,850 in smaller amounts going back to 2005. Each one listed under my name as educational expenses." My mother put her hand over her mouth. "I didn't know about the smaller ones," my father said quietly. "I want you to know that doesn't change what I'm responsible for." "No," I said, "it doesn't." The door opened, and cold December air came in behind Ashley and Emma. Emma was 7, pigtails, a winter coat covered in snowflake patches, the slightly overwhelmed expression of a child who knows the adults around her are dealing with something significant and is being very careful about it. Ashley sat down at the table without asking. Emma settled in beside her. "I read the article," Ashley said. She meant a piece I had written for a legal newsletter 3 months earlier about custodial account rights and unauthorized withdrawals. It had been passed around more than I expected. I never knew about the $13,000, not until Mom told me this week. "You didn't ask," I said. She flinched. "You're right. I didn't ask because I didn't want the answer." My father leaned forward. "If there's anything we can do now financially." "I make $74,000 a year," I said. "I own my apartment. I have savings. I don't need your money." My mother's voice was barely above a whisper. "Then, what do you need from us?" I looked at both of them. "Honesty," I said. "That's all. And the right to decide what our relationship looks like going forward. On my terms, not yours." My mother reached across the table and put her hand on mine. I did not pull away. I did not squeeze back. I let her hand sit there while I decided what to do with it. Emma had been watching all of this with the quiet attention of a 7-year-old who has learned to read rooms. "Are you my Uncle Sterling?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Mommy showed me your picture. She says you're a lawyer." "That's right. Is that why you have a folder?" "Lawyers always have folders," I said. "It's the law." She appeared to find this reasonable. My father exhaled, the closest he had come all morning to the release of something long held. I looked at Ashley. "I'll send Emma birthday cards. Maybe we can have lunch sometime. Just us." Ashley nodded, her eyes wet. "I'd like that." My father tried once more. "We thought we were protecting the family. You protected Ashley, I said. You sacrificed me. Those are not the same thing. Question. My mother. Quietly. I know, and I'm sorry. Sterling. We failed you. I looked at her. I know, and I survived anyway. I stood up. Emma waved with the full commitment of a child who has decided she likes you. Bye, Uncle Sterling. Bye. Emma. I walked out into the December cold. No hug with my parents. No dramatic scene. Just the clean, specific lightness of a man who has finally said what needed saying and no longer needs to carry it. People ask if I forgave them. I think that's the wrong question. Forgiveness implies I was waiting for them to deserve it. I wasn't waiting. I was building a life where their approval didn't determine the value of my choices. A career where I help other people protect themselves from the same kind of quiet, loving, entirely deniable theft I had watched happen to me over 12 years. My grandmother Ruth left me $92,000, not as a family asset, as a statement of belief about who I was, what I was capable of, what my future was worth to her. She signed it and notarized it and put it in writing because she understood that the things you don't write down can be taken from you by the people who are supposed to love you most. I used every cent exactly the way she intended. I graduated debt-free. I passed the bar. I built a career. The framed gift letter is on the wall of my office now. When a new client sits across from me, usually a son or a daughter looking ashamed, saying maybe I'm being selfish, I point to it. Your grandmother wrote it down. That's the law. Not guilt. Not emergency. Not love that's been weaponized. They nod. And then we go to work. The navy blue folder is in my desk drawer. 2 and thick. Complete. Being the capable one doesn't make you disposable. It makes you powerful. If you know your rights, document everything, and are willing to stand alone when everyone around you says to sacrifice. I didn't break my family. I stopped letting them break me. And on a Saturday morning in December, in a coffee shop on Atlantic Street in Stamford, I sat across from the people who had tried, and I let them see clearly, and without drama, exactly who I had become. They built me better than they intended to. That's the most honest thing I can say about all of it. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more family-centered accounts like. The strange thing about healing is that it rarely looks the way you imagine it will. I used to think it meant winning every argument, exposing every lie, or finally hearing the apology I believed I deserved. It turned out to be much quieter than that. Healing was sitting across the table from people who no longer had the power to define me. It was answering their questions without anger, listening without surrendering my peace, and walking away without carrying their expectations home with me. For years, I believed my worth depended on whether my family finally understood me. I waited for recognition that never came, approval that was always conditional, and affection that seemed to disappear the moment I stopped being useful. What I eventually discovered was that freedom begins the moment you stop asking people to become who they've already shown you they are. That realization didn't make me bitter. It made me lighter. I stopped trying to rewrite the past and started writing a future that no longer required anyone else's permission. The people sitting across from me that Saturday morning saw someone they didn't recognize. Not because I had become colder, but because I had become calmer. I no longer defended every decision or apologized for every success. I no longer confused setting boundaries with being selfish. I had finally learned that saying no to disrespect is another way of saying yes to yourself. That lesson cost me relationships I once thought I couldn't live without. But it gave me something far more valuable in return: peace that no one else could take away. As I left the coffee shop, the December air felt sharp against my face, but for the first time in years, it didn't feel lonely. I wasn't walking away from my family. I was walking toward my own life. There is an important difference. Families can disappoint you. They can misunderstand you, underestimate you, and even betray you. But they don't get to decide the ending of your story unless you hand them the pen. I stopped doing that a long time ago. Looking back now, I don't hate the people who tried to make me feel small. I don't even spend much time wondering why they did it. Their choices belong to them. Mine belong to me. And every good thing I've built since then, a peaceful home, honest friendships, meaningful work, and mornings where I wake up excited instead of anxious, stands as proof that your future doesn't have to resemble your past. Sometimes, the greatest act of courage isn't proving your family wrong. It's proving to yourself that you were never who they said you were. If this story has taught me anything, it's that surviving difficult people isn't the victory. Becoming the kind of person they could never stop you from becoming, that's the victory. And one day, you'll realize that the chapter you once thought ruined your life became the chapter that quietly introduced you to the strongest version of yourself. In the end, I didn't lose my family. I lost the version of myself that believed love had to be earned by sacrificing my own happiness. That was the only goodbye that truly changed everything. And it turned out to be the beginning I had been searching for all along.